Rabbi Weiss, thank you so much for being with me on 101 North Podcasts and Plain Talk. It's really, really an honor to have you on my show.
Thank you.
Uh, let's start with an important question. For just for the understanding of my audience, which is around 90% of predominantly Muslim in across Kashmir, help me understand the main differences between the uh, Judaism and the Zionism. And I also believe that Judaism is a true religion and it has been there for last more than 3,000 years. And Zionism is something which has been intoxicated, roughly from last 100 and 120 years, if I'm not wrong. Please
Right.
throw a light.
Yeah, so first I pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message and so sanctify His name and inshallah, hopefully bring peace to the world. Amen. And assalamu alaikum to all the people who join your podcast. We hope that maybe from this podcast we'll be able to spread around the world and really bring a catalyst to bring peace to the world, inshallah. Yes, that's the most. That is, I think, probably the most pertinent, the most important question in regard to what's happening today in Palestine and what's happening today in the Holy Land, and perhaps the repercussions around the world, because the Zionists, which we're going to discuss with God's help, and that is the state of Israel. It's the ideology that built and created the state of Israel. That state insists on claiming that we have a religious conflict between Muslims and then more encompassing Arabs and Jewish people, and it's like a religious conflict, and that is where the seed of all this hate is, and the only way to quell that, to stop that, would be by somehow extricating, separating the Muslims from the Arabs from this Jewish populace. Only the few that seem not to matter, the Jewish people. But beside that, as a general rule, the problem is the people of Palestine. Now, that is patently false. That's totally false. It's repugnant. For us, it's really repulsive to hear even such a thing, because first of all, as Jews, we lived together for hundreds and hundreds of years in every single Arab and Muslim country. Throughout our history, we were hounded. There was the Inquisition, the Crusades. They tried to forcibly convert Jews in the Inquisition, and many other times there were blood libels in other areas in Europe. And it was the Muslim countries that took us in, embraced us, and we were able to flourish as very religious Jews, distinctly religious amongst distinctly Muslim people. Now, the question you asked is, what is this Judaism? What is the difference? Well, Judaism, with God's help, that means to be subservient to God, accepting the Torah, as you mentioned, which was given around 3,000 years ago when Moshe Rabbeinu went up on Mount Sinai, and we accepted this covenant of God to keep many commandments, 613 commandments of the Torah, basically to all godly laws. Godly is compassion, just as God is compassionate. You must be compassionate. The Almighty is compassionate. He is the Almighty, the all compassionate, and so forth. So we're supposed to emulate Him and follow His laws, and His laws are not to kill, not to steal, and all the many other different laws. We have other laws that pertain to us, to God Himself, like keeping the Sabbath, keeping the 10 Commandments of the Sabbath, just like God created the world, 6 days, the seventh He rested. So we have many commandments, and we're not allowed to stray even one iota, one centimeter away from these laws. And we have, for 3,000 years, we adhered strictly to the laws of the Torah. Zionism is a total transformation to nationalism. They proudly declare they're a democracy. You can do what you want. You don't have to keep the 10 Commandments. You don't have to keep the Sabbath that God said, I created the world 6 days, seventh day rested. You don't it's nothing. It's freedom. That's what they say. It's not even freedom. That's false. It's not a democracy because depending who you are, it's a selective democracy. But that said, but that's not what Judaism is. So how dare they tell the world that they're the Jewish state, the audacity, the hubris to tell the world they're a Jewish state, use the Star of David, the name Israel, which is Jacob. How could you say that when we made a covenant with God to uphold His Torah? God tells us, I'm giving you life, I'm breathing into you life, but you must uphold the Torah. We made a covenant. That's the strongest bond we can make, and a promise to the Almighty. And so first of all, that's the first issue, to know that these are heretics. The whole issue of Zionism is totally not Judaism. I carry pictures of many. We have many of our rabbis, great men in the Holy Land, the leaders of Judaism. I mean, this you can our large communities, Sephardic, Ashkenazic, and different. And on the flip side, you will go. I show a picture of. By the Declaration of Independence, David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, where you can having at the dais, reading the Declaration of Independence. It's the most historic moment for the state of Israel. You see the Star of David. Here you see Theodore Herzl with all the people here, and none of them are covering their heads. I mean, it's just a requirement of the law of Judaism that we have to cover our heads to show that we believe in God, that's a God above us. And here they're making us a Jewish state, a historic issue, and it's totally not. Just 1 second, I apologize. Excuse me. Do you see me? Am I here?
Yes.
I lost the screen. That's why I pulled this out. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, so the whole thing is totally antithetical. I mean, it's impossible to actually combine the two to confuse the two together. But this is what Zionism is, and as I say, it's just purely like if it would be a Muslim gathering, a Muslim making a Muslim state, you would see imams, you would see sheikh, and so forth. So that's the first step. Secondly, they say that they're full of hypocrisy, like I say, and that here they're calling it a Jewish state, and yet they're totally not Jewish. But now then they say that the end of exile, the beginning, they call themselves Eschalta de Gula. Jewish people believe that God told us to go up to the Holy Land 3,000 years ago, and we went up to the Holy Land as it was required in the Torah. It's all in the Torah, written in the 5 books of Moses. And God and He said that we have to go in. There were people who were reluctant to go, and therefore we were punished. We had to be 40 years wandering in the wilderness. If somebody reads the books of the Bible after they went out of Egypt. They went out through God's miracles, the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea. And then God said, when God said we had to go in, there were people who didn't want to go. As I say, we were punished because of that. Then the Jews went into the Holy Land, but how? With miracles. The walls of Jericho sunk into the ground. So it was all miraculous. But God warned us in the Torah that He wants us to go there to be able to serve Him on a very high level of holiness. And if we won't be on that high level of holiness, then the land is a holy land that will reject us like a body rejects the foreign objects. It's very sensitive. So we warned many times in the Torah that it's not going to be on that level. And 2,000 years ago, also King Solomon built a temple, going through scanning through hundreds of years. And then 2,000 years ago, as we were warned by the prophets of Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, all the prophets warned the Jews that we're not on that level of holiness, that we will, God forbid, be sent out. And that's what happened 2,000 years ago. There was the destruction of King Solomon's temple and the second temple, and we were dispersed amongst the nations, and we were put on the oath by God that we should remember we were sent into exile not because we were lacking guns, we were physically lacking, but because we were spiritually not on that level that was required. They were very good Jews, but they were not on that level. And therefore, God put us under oath again, not 3 oaths, not to return en masse in large numbers, not to rebel against any nation, dispersed amongst the world. We have to be loyal citizens in every country we reside, in any shape or form. So, because this is, God foresaw that there'll be people who will be impatient with this decree of exile. And so He warned us, don't attempt to leave exile. So we're forbidden to return in large numbers. As individuals throughout this 2,000 years, with the permission of the ruling government, the last few hundred years was the Ottoman Empire, a Muslim government. As individuals, and so great rabbis, people who retired from their from the posts as rabbinical authorities or whatever, would go and live in the Holy Land. So it was the elite of Judaism would go there simply not for material reasons, simply to practice in the Holy Land of religion. But as a movement, as a large movement, were forbidden. And also, so we're not to make any attempt to end exile. So Zionism, in and of itself, the concept of what they call a Jewish state, is a direct rebellion against this concept of exile. Now, understand that why would these people who I just showed, these heretics, these non-religious people, why would they want to make this state in Palestine? Simply, the truth is that they didn't want to. They wanted to make it in Uganda, Patagonia, next to Brazil, because they felt that it would be much more a fruitful land, a lush land, they can be more productive. But they understood, they had a meeting in the 1890s in Basel, Switzerland, and they said, this is not good. We need, practically speaking, we need massive support in order to be able to establish a land, a country. So they decided Palestine is unique for that because they can sell to the world that God gave the children of Israel the Holy Land, and then evangelistic Christians will support them because it's a very big issue by them. And then they'll have the non-affiliated Jews. In other words, the majority, unfortunately, of Jews don't practice their religion, so they'll count on their ignorance of the religion. They'll use their emotions. And every Jew, we yearn and pray to return the land. And that's part of the basics of Judaism. But we yearn and pray that God should end the exile. We would return and be subservient to Him and sanctify His name. And we believe at the end of time, God will rebuild the temple Himself without any human intervention. So we yearn and wait for the day when there will be a metaphysical change in the world, where all humanity will recognize one God. They will stop being atheists. And then God will build the temple. Everybody will serve. So that's the basics of Judaism. Our life is to serve God, to sanctify His name. The pinnacle of this is when God will end that. So I'll make this miraculous happening. But till that day comes, we are expressly forbidden to try to leave exile. Zionism, because they have no morals, they don't care. They laugh at what it says in the Torah. So in the Jewish, the books of Moses. So they turn around and they say, so they said they need a land. Well, we'll use Palestine. What the world will tell the world, hey, it's God's given. It's what God gave us the land.
God's own chosen people and God's own chosen country. That's what they say.
Right. So and they totally ignore. They knowingly ignore, because we're not talking about ignoramuses. We're not talking about people that aren't lacking of knowledge. So they said we'll just ignore all the issues of the books of the prophets and what it says in the Torah, that we were sent out of exile and that we are forbidden to return en masse. And they simply said, with the beginning of the redemption, playing on the emotions of the Jewish people. So there you have a clear distinction between Judaism, to serve God, simply to practice the laws of Moses, to keep the Sabbath, to keep the commandments, not to kill, not to steal, to eat kosher, like that simple to halal. And Zionism, which is a nationalist movement, a base national, void of godliness, purely the facade of Judaism they're using to gain legitimacy, to stifle any objections, because they can always scream, hey, you're an anti-Semite. So they use the religion as a tool. But on top of that, being that they turned to Palestine, Palestine was an inhabited land. It was of people living there. The large community was the Muslims, the second largest was Christian, and the third, the minority, were the Jews. Now, the Jewish populace, and they lived together in one fabric, one beautiful fabric that was the Holy Land. They lived there for hundreds of years. But so when the Zionists come and they want to take over control over the land, so obviously the Muslim people didn't want that, and the Christian people either didn't want it. It happens to be that the Jewish populace didn't want that, because they were this was a God-fearing, it was the elite of the world society of Jews would come and settle there. So it was from every country, it was the greatest rabbis, and so they were the Ivy League of Judaism, the leading, and all of these people were God-fearing, and they said, God forbid, we don't want this Zionism, this is not Judaism. So all three of them objected to the ratification, to the establishment of the state of Israel in the Holy Land. So therefore, let's just turn to the issue of the Muslims and the Christians. To subjugate, to oppress banish to the people of of the Muslim and the Christians, and to kill, oppress, and everything that we're seeing today, and the worst today in Gaza. This is all forbidden. It says in the Torah, you're not allowed to kill, you're not allowed to steal. So in order to accomplish their state, they're breaching every concept of the law. Its essence is a rebellion against God. In actions, in essence, it's a heresy. In action, it's a rebellion against God because they're breaching all the laws of the Torah, not to kill, not to steal. And on top of that, it says in the Torah we have to show gratitude done to us. That's the basics of the Torah. What gratitude? The Muslim countries, as I said, during our suffering, took us in, and we were and embraced us, and we flourished in the lands. So how dare the Zionists state that the reason people oppose their creation of the state is because they're anti-Semitic and they hate Jews? There's nothing more repulsive than that. So in every facet, every way you look at the Zionist state, it's diametrically opposite. It's antithetical. It's contradictory to my religion, Judaism, and all the rabbinical authorities from day one opposed the state. We put out a book, The Rabbis Speak Out, which is a compilation of 130 years of Jewish opposition to Zionism, and from a compilation from the greatest rabbis of around the world. That means because there were tens of thousands of rabbis, but 130 years from then, when Zionism started, it's the seed of Zionism till today, where we have the greatest rabbis, the codifier of Jewish laws around the world, the ones that everybody looked at them as the authority of Judaism, the leaders, because Judaism is a religion. So we looked at these were the leaders. So I always give one, like Rabbi Yisroel Dovid Weiss. He was a codifier of Jewish law, recognized around the world. We use him, and he wrote. He said, "The Zionists are dead limbs of our people, which causes the entire body to rot." In other words, it's one little piece that's causing the entire body to rot. He passed away in 1933, well before the state was declared. And everybody knows of him and so forth. And we had from Hasidic, everybody stood up. Lithuanian, Slavic Jews, everybody stood up. When they moved to Palestine, this movement, so the chief rabbis met this was from this community. Now I say chief rabbi, nothing to do with the Israeli rabbinate, because a part of their facade, their masquerading, is they made a rabbinate and a chief rabbi. But the real Jewish community had their rabbinate and their chief rabbi. In the 1920s, the chief rabbi was Rabbi Sonnenfeld. It's a lifelong position. So, and he met with the king of Transjordan, who was at the head of Jordan and so forth. And he pleaded, and he met with him, and he wrote letters in Arabic to the Arab League and so forth. And he said, "We are totally opposed to Zionism. We don't aspire to take the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Nothing. It's nothing. We ought to live in peace and be just good citizens." When he passed on, the next chief rabbi was Rabbi Dushinsky of blessed memory, and he was at 1947 when the United Nations sent a delegation in order to see about creating the state of Israel. And he met with the delegation, and he said, and it's in the United Nations records, "We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." He said, "We don't want to have anything of this." And again, then afterwards, he passed on. There you see the taking up of the next chief rabbi, tens of thousands in just one in Kippur Shabbos, and literally hundreds of thousands who were following this around. So you have this: the Jewish community remained true to Judaism in opposition to Zionism. You had here invariably around the world, the very religious Jews who are true to our religion are opposed to the whole concept of Zionism, the whole establishment of the state. Here you have going up, Netanyahu went to visit the president, and he says, "Bibi Netanyahu does not, and the state of Israel does not represent world Jewry. Israel has no right to rule of any part of the Holy Land." And this is you see tens of thousands going to visit outside of the United Nations. These are very religious Jews. And that's our narrative around the world from day one till today. And our rabbis, when they go out in Palestine and they speak up, first of all, they get brutally beaten. And we're never militant. The Arab people, they say, "Oh, they carry guns, they're terrorists." They can't sell that evil, that false story about the religious Jews because we don't carry guns, and nobody could accuse us of that. Yet they brutally beat young children, old men, assassinate our rabbis. And this is going on for well over 75 years of their existence. These are the military beating and like I say, we have many pictures of what they do. It's all there to see. Yet the world is silent because they have a free pass, a free ride. After all, it's their country. They do obviously treat the Jews right. They're the heroes of Judaism. They're saving Jews, right? So they have a right to do what they beat. They trample. They ride them with cars on their demonstrations. They spray them with the stink water. That's a new policy of a couple of years already that destroys their clothes because they know it's a poor community because we don't take any funding from the Israeli government. So they will discourage demonstrations. They spray them with stink chemicals. And this is on and on and on. And yet, still in all, they're not silent. Here, they demonstrate. This is in Mea Shearim in the city of Jerusalem. Stop Zionist terrorist massacre in Gaza. So this is, and these are ongoing demonstrations. So that's basically like an overview what the difference is between Zionism, Judaism, and the Jewish world. The very religious is the more the religious, the more anti-Zionist they are, and why we will never accept the occupation, and that we cry and we hurt with the suffering of the people of Palestine since the creation of Zionism till today. And today just today is another link in this Nakba. It's just another link. It's a